Yo, welcome back to Evil Scuba Diver. Today I'm talking about every single album I listened to in March 2025. What is March? March is a month, and it's done now, and I listened to a lot of albums, and for me, March was kind of a weird month. Been working on a lot of new music, some of which I'm happy with, some of which I'm not, and that's a weird, creative, cathartic experience to be making stuff that you're not proud of, but we move. Life is a roller coaster. I am just seat belted onto the ride, per se. For all my scuba diver fans out there, summer's coming up. I cannot wait to get out of this fucky ass dorm room which has like no productivity energy in it whatsoever. And at least that's how I feel. I feel like my output has been staggering and I really kind of hate that. It eats at me, right? It's like but I'm aware of it and I want to change it. And that's what this next month leading into summer is going to be. I'm going to try and do some cool shit for y'all. But enough about me. Let's talk about my opinions, right? This is the most albums I've listened to in a month. Maybe that's something that we can break down, analyze why. Am I doing okay? Is there something wrong with my brain? Am I just liking music more? Who knows? But this is the most amount of albums I've ever listened to in a single month, and we got some B-roll pulling up for you. I don't know what the B-roll is gonna be. I haven't really been playing much video games. I've been creating, but maybe I'll just grind out like a couple matches of Fortnite and 2 times speed in the background as I'm editing this video. Who knows? I want to give y'all something to, have the dopamine flow and the dopamine machine, the serotonin, the adrenaline or whatever they call it, Andrew Huberman words. But let's just get straight into it, okay? Let's go. Scaring the Hose by JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown. Listen to this one at the top of the month. I was doing some homework, decided I wanted some weird fuck shit in my headphones, and this was that album. I think this is Mad Villainy for terminally online people. I think this is Mad Villainy for like the 2020s decade. Like the 2020s decade needed a sort of album like this, a weird sort of avant-garde, like unapologetically gross, distorted itself record. This whole thing's produced by JPEG Mafia, and I think it's going to age very well because JPEG Mafia samples absolutely insane stuff, unapologetically, very terminally online samples here and there, stuff that you would not hear in any other record to come before or after, which is unique and just something that makes this album stand out to me a lot. Also, Danny Brown is the main like lyrical collaborator on this thing, and when you have JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown, who are both like sort of their own avant-garde like knights in their own respective fields, and they come together, they make an album that is like avant-garde squared, which I think is really, really unique and interesting. A lot of people might get turned away from the mixing and the distorted production and how it literally sounds like it's got pulled out like a VHS from the dumpster or something, right? But I really appreciate that. Like this is a really good listen for like an airplane or like a hike or like probably not doing homework. It's legitimately like Adderall condensified into audio waves. I think it's gonna be remembered as like a generational album, sort of like we remember like Wu-Tang albums and shit. I know it's pretty insane to say right off the bat, like it just came out a couple of years ago. I'm willing to bet though. I'm willing to say it. Only JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown could have made this, and that's why I'm happy it exists and it stands its own like monolithic creativity thing, structure thing. Okay, let's keep going. Haram by Armand Hammer and The Alchemist. This album is beautiful in more ways than one. One way it's beautiful is because The Alchemist is completely 180ing his sampling and producing style. He's not like putting just like loops over here and like dusty samples and like maybe adding like a weird like timbale or something just floating around. No, he's making smoky, hazy filled rooms. It's like you're being introduced into like an Illuminati like checkered floor room, and there's smoke everywhere and there's candles, and then Billy Woods and Elusive, who are Armand Hammer, they're coming together and they're like rapping you hymns and stuff that really have no inherent meaning, but they dig their way into your psyche, and then you start like feeling shit. The beats are mystical, the lyrics are mystical, you don't really know what's going on, you're just sort of along for this 45-minute smoky, hazy ride experience, and the lyrics I really appreciate because they don't really mean anything first listen. You could listen to them and it's not like they're telling you about their life or like their experiences or anything. They're giving you like weird abstract metaphors that come off more like philosophical like analogies for things that you can just interpret your own meanings to. The song Stone Fruit, Billy Woods is talking about how this woman is holding his head and drinking out of it like it's a wine glass, and he's describing it as like an orgasmic experience. I don't know where that comes from. I don't know how to take that or perceive that, but I am like leaning in closer and trying to analyze it for myself, right? And I'm picturing the scenario, and the way he raps it is like so energetic, and like he's almost like I don't want to say screaming, but he's borderline yelling into the mic. This really weird experience. And it just makes me lean in closer, and that's what this album is. It's like something just leaning closer to, like, what's going on here? And I really appreciate that. So shout out Haram. Next album, Science Fiction by Uncle with a K. This is a beat tape. It's a grungy New York like mechanical beat tape. It feels like I'm inside of a like one of those clocks with all the gears turning and like shit like that. I don't exactly know how to tangibly describe it. It's like being trapped in a piece of machinery. Like the beats themselves are very industrial and weird and grimy, and they're like adding samples of fog and like wind and like city ambience and cars and shit like that, just like swerving around. And it's very, very world buildy in this very smoky's a good word. I've been using it back to back, but it's very like, I don't know, let's use a different word, dusty, like a very dusty album, dusty samples. It's like 90s trip hop too. Tom York is on this thing too. He does like vocals on top of this weird trip hop 90s beat. Also, this is produced by DJ Shadow. Uncle is DJ Shadow and another producer, I believe, combined, making their own like duo group. And man, I was blown away. This album is produced immaculately. It honestly inspired me to like get back into my sampling bag, because I've been making a lot of stuff with like acoustic guitar and like recording stuff through amps and shit like that. More on that later. But this album's like hella inspired me to just get back in my sample bag. Some Double Rainbow shit, you know what I mean? I don't know. That's what every time I listen to this album or I listen to a song from it, I'm just like, man, like sampling is awesome, you know what I mean? And this is one of those albums that just gets you back into it, like the love for it. And also, this reminded me how awesome DJ Shadow is at producing environments with music, or with samples rather. Just a beautiful album. It's kind of niche. I haven't really heard anybody ever talk about it, but it had a cool album cover. I checked it out, and man, it's like a heater front to back. It's like a solid, like if Anthony Fantano rated this, it would probably be like an 8 or a 9 out of 10. Like that's how good it is. So that's kind of the methodology I'm sort of like trying to put you on with. You should listen. It's definitely worth your time. Let's keep it rolling. The Paris, Texas EPs. They Left Me With the Sword, They Left Me With the Gun. Those two ones. I thought they were alright. The ideas were cool. I liked the beats. It wasn't really taking me anywhere compared to like an album like Mid-Air, which I listened to later in this month we'll get to. I will say though that the charisma and the beats are like zanier than ever. They're getting a little bit more avant-garde with it. And also the music video for They Left Me With the Gun, or yeah, that one, it's wild. The way they're using like visuals and aesthetics. I don't know if I can put it up on the screen, but if you've seen that music video, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's wild. It's one of the best music videos I've ever seen. And to be honest, it really did uplift the song for me when I heard it with a music video, so I gotta give it credit. Like, it really sort of translated the vision like an extra like 25% for me, which is what a music video is supposed to do, I think. Even though I think these EPs were alright, not blowing me away, I can still take away with the fact these guys are evolving. The bars are getting weirder and more like Joey Valance and Bray coded, and like their charisma is shining through, and they're giving like nerdy little bars here and there, and it's really fun. Like, there's more personality in this thing than I would have imagined, and I can see that, and I respect it, and I'm like watching it, and I'm like, that's cool, you know? But overall, these EPs to me were just like alright. I like the concept of like being left with a sword, being left with a gun. The opening track is like an ambient sort of like some dude handing this dude a sword. He's like, ah, yes, a weapon, a good weapon choice. It's like an interesting thing. It's like I'm in Skyrim or something. Next album, King of Limbs by Radiohead. This album's beautiful. It's so underrated. People like always talk about this as Radiohead's worst album. I beg to differ. I'm not even talking about like the live from the basement thing. People always say, oh, King of Limbs live from the basement is way better than the album. No, the album itself is beautiful and awesome, and you guys need to get tapped in immediately. They're sampling themselves. They're playing drum loops and they're sampling them, but they're using them as like it's a sound play experience ambient album. That's what it is. The engineer and the mixer and the masterer going full blown ham, just like making the most beautiful experience you possibly can, with Radiohead messing around, making interesting loops and ambient changes and stuff. I mean, songs like Give Up the Ghost, songs like Separator, the one with the piano, I forget which one that one is called. I think it's Separator, I'm not sure, but the one with the piano, Codex, I don't know. It's very nice, very beautiful. Everything is like so layered. It makes a free floating like experience. It feels like I am like a ghost and I'm like floating through the Liffey. Oh, but yeah, just take a listen to this album and be sent to Soundplay heaven. Like, as a producer, as somebody's trying to evolve his sound, this thing is really inspiring to me because it's no holds barred. It is just like a weird fucking world just put out there. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful album. Check it out. I think it might be better than some albums that other people might like more. All I'll say is I listened to King of Limbs more than I listened to A Moon-Shaped Pool this month, or more than I listened to Pablo Honey, or more than I listened to Hail to the Thief, right? So that's all I'm saying. Yeah, next album, Discovery by Daft Punk. I wrote in my notes compressors because this album sounds very compressed, but in a very cool way. Daft Punk is using compression as an instrument, and it's very nice. It makes a very intense EDM experience face to face. I forgot that song was on this album. Holy shit. And then I listened to songs like Night Vision, which is like an ambient interlude, and I'm just like, man, these guys just understand an album flow. Digital Love is one of my favorite songs ever. It got such a glitzy, beautiful thing. It sounds like something I would have tried to make in like the Mecha Robo era of my creativity. And this album is very minimal. It has like simple layers. Like it's just kick, drum, sample, maybe some other manipulations or whatever. But at most, some of these songs are like 10 tracks. If you're really analyzing the layers, you might have some sound effects here and there, but it's just like a pure dance album. Something that you can just put on and you're not even really thinking too hard. And the melodies and the samples and the way they're breaking this stuff down is just... it just hits you in the right way, and that's perfect. It's beauty. I'm glad the album cover's back to normal. For a bit, it was this weird, like, hacked album cover that didn't really fit, but I like the black background, chrome, Daft Punk, because that just really captures the vibe of this album. It's like discovering, like, a new element on a meteor or something, and you touch it, and it just makes you groove and makes you dance. That's all I gotta say. Everybody knows Discovery's awesome. Next album, Scrapyard by Quedeca. Still awesome. Really love the sound of this album. Very smudgy, very weird. I love the production on this thing. A song like Texas Blue is something that stands out to me now more than ever. Just the piano, just the way that's produced. It sounds very blonde coded. It sounds like Pink and White, but like more maximalist with the production features. I love the sound of the shit. I come back to it every once in a while because, I mean, if you're a 100% artist and you're just one of one and you're just doing your own thing and tunnel visioning on something that you love and you're doing it to 100% your capability, the best of your ability, it's gonna come out awesome to me. It's like, because that's your vision. It's weird. It's like the same thing with Scaring the Hose, JPEG Mafia. That's a one-of-one vision. Nobody else could have created that. Same thing with Scrapyard, right? That's the shit I live for. And albums like these, we need more of them. We need more artists out there who are willing to like 100% just tunnel vision on their craft and make something beautiful to them and then share it with the world. But yeah, next album. Let's keep going. Luminescent Creatures by Ichiko Aoba. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. I apologize if not. This album was recommended to me on one of my other videos on Evil Scuba, and I decided, okay, I'll check it out. And it's pretty beautiful. It's a Japanese like singer-songwriter album, but it's not like your typical singer-songwriter album where it's just like, you know, leaning in close with the guitar and like being all sad. No, this thing is decked out with sound effects and beautiful chord progressions that sound borderline romantic and like almost like from the Renaissance age of just like, how can we make these chord progressions as beautiful as possible? How can we make these melodies sway in a way that's different than anything else you've heard in popular music before? And they're doing some cool shit down there in Japan, low key. They're thinking about music in a romantic, beautiful way, and it seeps into the compositions on this thing. The first song especially is something that really grabs my ear. Also, there's a lot of noise. Like the recordings have a lot of like noise floor, like grain or whatever, and you can hear that in the album. It's kind of hard to not notice, but to be honest, I don't really care. I don't mind a little bit of noise here and there. It feels like texture. The fact that this album has noise differentiates it from the albums that don't have noise for me, and that makes it interesting to me. You know what I mean? So I really don't mind too much. It's a cool little feature about it. And also it makes it more authentic. It's somebody recording these, you know, mic'd up guitars and vocals intimately, probably in like a room setting or something. I'm assuming this isn't a huge studio album or something. Assuming, but it's beautiful. And I like hearing that noise because it's a reminder of like this is a real person, a real human recording their ideas. And yeah, that's cool. That's enough for me. Next album, Kid A by Radiohead. I wrote that this would be very weird to hear in 2001, and that's kind of what I was keyed into this time around listening to it, is like if I was coming off of OK Computer and I was a Radiohead fan, I listened to Kid A, what would I be feeling? What would I be thinking? And to be honest, I can understand why people would hate this shit first listen. It's weird. It's the greatest left turn in all of music. It's an ambient electronic IDM inspired rock album. The flow of this album is cold and dark and weird. Tree Fingers comes out of nowhere, and it's very depressing and sort of sedated. It puts you in a weird headspace. I think that's the strong point of this album, is that it's a 45-minute experience of just like depression, being in a cold bathtub, not knowing what to do with your life sort of vibe. And also what I can appreciate is that this album purposely feels like it's Radiohead trying to alienate their fan base at certain moments. Like listening to National Anthem and putting myself in the context of somebody who only knows them for like OK Computer in like 1997 or something, and this album comes out in 2001, and I hear National Anthem for the first time. If I'm putting myself in that perspective, I'm freaked out. I'm not wanting to listen. But with all the context I have now of like what Radiohead has blossomed into and like what sounds are now emerging from 2001 to 2025, this is just a wild experimental sort of choice to have all these giant trumpets just like cacophonying on top of each other. I remember one of my professors here in college was a big Radiohead fan. He described the National Anthem as like a traffic jam of just like bullshit. I don't think he cussed, but I did. And yeah, I appreciate this one, man. How weird can we make this album? That was like the main question probably going through the band's head. And they made something pretty weird, but pretty psychedelic and its own little cold little world. And that's pretty cool. Album cover fits perfectly. What can I say? Next album, Crumbling by Midair Thief. This album was also recommended to me. I had a drive home for spring break, a 5-hour drive. I threw on some albums that people recommended, and this was one of them, Crumbling. And this is beautiful. It's a beautiful produced experience. I listened to it in the car. I was mind blown. It's like a hi-fi Sweet Trip album from like a different continent. I believe it's Japanese, but I mean they're speaking Japanese. I'm assuming they're from Japan. But it's like electronic music combined with acoustic singer-songwriter stuff in a very maximal way. It's like a singer-songwriter album with EDM elements, but everything is still soft. Like it's if you produced a singer-songwriter album like an EDM album, but kept everything still sort of like beautiful and soft and weird. Protector and These Chains are my two favorite songs of this album. You guys should give those a spin if you're not like down to listen to the whole thing, which I don't know why you wouldn't be. I'm trying to put you on to some beautiful music here. And if you guys have been hearing the new like Quedeca Vanisher snippets, which you probably have because you're like a music nerd and shit like that, it kind of sounds like this. Crumbling by Midair Thief gives me the same vibes as like the new Quedeca single Godstained, a little bit more maximalist, more like electronically produced, more textured probably too. It's just a sick little album. I'm very glad that you put me on out there, whoever did. Much love to you. Kind of ran my spring break, just listening to it in the car. Love the way those strings come in on Protector. It's like a weird detuned sitar, and it comes out and it bursts forward like just a billion tons of chariots, just like smashing me in my headphones and my speakers. Whatever place I'm listening to, man, it will hit me. The translation is perfect. But let's move on. Midair by Paris, Texas. This is an explosive ass fun album. I listened to this right after Crumbling on that same drive I was talking about, and man, it's like a complete 180 from styles, but I'm here for each one of them. This is my first time listening. If I heard this album in high school, it probably would have altered my brain chemistry the same way Brockhampton altered a lot of people's. Like it would have like altered my musical trajectory. I probably would be a completely different artist if I heard this like freshman year of high school, or if it came out back then. I don't know. I think this was what, 2021, right? Speaking of Brockhampton, like the Brockhampton energy is here. It's very much here, but it's like rage induced and hard rock centered, and it's two dudes just going zany, going crazy on the beat, right? The beats are crazy, they're weird, they're welcome. A lot of hard rock influence, like I said. The transition from track 1 to track 2 on the album, it got me amped up. I was ready to like run over the car next to me going 180 from that transition. The type of transition that you study in like a textbook. I will say some songs aren't exactly memorable to me. I can't really think in my head of like a chorus that stands out or a verse that stands out, but the whole experience I remember being more than enough to like chew on. You know what I mean? Like it was a good listen front to back, even though I can't remember songs for their individual parts. I just remember this thing being like an energy burst and shit. So no complaints here. Let's keep going. Coming Home, Portraits of Tracy. This is my first time listening to this album. This is my first time really being acquainted with Portraits of Tracy. I've heard the name around. I really haven't dug into their stuff. But this is a hi-fi sort of dance pop rap album that like explodes at every turn it possibly can. It's very hi-fi, very maximalist. It gives me a lot of Because the Internet vibes too, because this album is a concept album where you have a lot of these interludes interwoven through the albums that tell a story, sort of like Because the Internet does, where you have portraits of Tracy coming home to see their mom, and just the experience of that is interwoven throughout the songs. It's like a 1-hour album, and you got these little interludes throughout that like show the progression. Like it starts with them at a venue, and they're like performing songs after they just took a nap or whatever, and then they drive home, and then they meet their mom, and then they set the table for like a thing, and they get into a fight, and then at the end of the album, the mother dies. Spoiler alert. The interludes are pretty ambitious. They tell a pretty ambitious story. I think for the most part they do it well, because the interludes sometimes are like 2 minutes long, but they're like Foley. It's like it's like you hear the footsteps, you hear the ambience of them walking in between and out of each room and stuff. It's very maximalist with how they do the interludes. It's like you can very visually picture a place. The energy is pretty wild throughout the whole album too. Like I said, like very big synths, very hi-fi, maximalist. Like I'd say Brockhampton because the internet coded too a little bit, but it's a long album. I'll say that. I think it's like over an hour, at least the version I listened to. But the energy's wild. You know what I mean? You're gonna pull some awesome songs out of this. I definitely got a cool experience out of this. I really appreciate people going a little bit more ambitious with their concepts and their albums and stuff. Like, who would come up with a concept like this? It's an album about coming home, and you like sprinkle all these interludes in, and you go maximalist as hell with all of it. It's very cool. It's a very personal album too, I feel like. And yeah, I don't really have any complaints. This is a really cool idea by Tracy here, and I listened to it, and it was dope. All right, next album, The Slow Rush by Tame Impala. Listen to this, was it last month or the month before, and I was really geeking out about like the lyrical themes and stuff, and how Kevin Parker was like losing his creativity throughout this album and like talking about it kind of, or at least struggling with it and like coming to terms with it through music. But this time I'm realizing how slushy and warped it sounds in like car speakers and stuff, and it really is, it's kind of cool. It sounds like the drums are very like laid back and low key. It sounds very tribal, very tropical. I've talked about this album before, but yeah, I was just focused on the instrumentation more this time around, just like really into the way he's producing this thing. I think the decisions he makes are pretty cool, if not a little bit sludgy and warped and a little bit lo-fi at some moments, right? Like Instant Destiny kind of sounds like it's being played from a reverbed room or something, the whole song. I love the reverb drums on It Might Be Time though. Like that's a really cool choice, just to like bake those drums, these heavy drums, and like tons of reverb, and just like make it a new textured experience, because it could have been a completely different song if you didn't add that or didn't do that decision, but it makes it very one of one to me. Just like, yeah, no one else could really produce a song like It Might Be Time except for Tame Impala and his decision making, right? So that's really awesome. Gotta love 100% one of one artists. Next album, Akron/Family by Akron/Family. Got self-titled. I've never heard of this album. I don't even know why I listened to it. I think I saw the album cover on my Apple Music and I was like, that's pretty sick, so I tapped in. But this is a small little folk album using like sound design and mic techniques to make like a unique sort of vibe. It kind of reminds me of like Phil Elverum, how he does his stuff. The lead vocals remind me of Phil Elverum a lot too. I feel like this album is like Phil Elverum coded. Like this dude definitely knew the microphones because this album came out around the same time, a little bit after the Glow Part 2. It sounds like they were inspired by Phil Elverum sonically, but this album's more whimsical than the Glow Part 2. It's more like fun. It's more like having fun with the sound design and not trying to put you in like a depressive episode, but trying to just create a weird whimsical world with like weird mic techniques and shakers being a little bit too loud but panned a little bit off, so it creates an interesting vibe, and the bass having a little bit more grit to it, and like panning room ambience around as well. Just weird little ideas that utilize like mic techniques and weird cool stuff. The songs come and go. It's more of like a 1 hour free form sort of experience with sound design. So if you like the Glow Part 2 or like microphone stuff, you'll like this album. It is more whimsical, which is very cool too. It's more fun. You're not going to be depressed after finishing it. There's a song called like Running/Returning, which has these like melodic doo-dahs with giant thumping toms. It sounds like something out of like My Singing Monsters or something, and it's weird and it's wild, and that's one that I can really gravitate to and sort of listen to and be like, yeah, it's a sick, interesting idea right there. And that's that album. So if you want whimsical Phil Elverum, Akron/Family. Let's keep going. Chromacopia by Tyler, the Creator. Listen to this one, and I really admire the layers this time around. I listened to Ra-Ta-Ta, and I was just kind of breaking down like all the different production elements going on. I'm like, yeah, this is a fully baked song. You know what I mean? You don't really pick up some of these elements first or second listen, but when you're on your fifth and you've heard the song multiple times and they're just picking out different sonic details and stuff, it's really, really something to take in. Also, there's a lot of effort going into these beautiful, soulful vocal stacks. Like Chromacopia is Tyler getting into his soul vocal bag more than anything. Like there's a lot of moments where there's just like vocal runs from other artists coming on or female vocalists, and they're just doing these giant soulful springs of action vocal wise. I also really appreciate how like Tyler takes off the personas for the most part and gets real. Like I remember him saying that the mask for this album being his face was because he was saying stuff so real that it was almost too uncomfortable, so he had to wear a mask of like his own face to sort of get some of this stuff out, which I think is a really interesting concept. Like a very cool way to like battle an insecurity and turn it into something creative for your album rollout. Like that's really inspiring to me. And he's still being like fun and hard hitting too. Like him, even though that's the most like emotional song on the record about like what does my dad look like? I've never seen my dad. There's still such fun, beautiful moments in this thing. He's doing a piano ballad with pitched up vocals. Like there's a lot of personality in here. It's like tongue in cheek a little bit with the production. The analog kit that's like doing like a 16th note swing, almost like a jazz record or something, but it's just analog like percussions and like weird like snares and shit. It's so off and weird, and it's something like only Tyler could think of probably. You know what I mean? Also, you get that one weird Baby Keem ad lib, huh, and then it just drops in like a synth solo. Like, and it's a beautiful album. That's my thoughts on Chromacopia. So let's go to the next one. Music by Playboi Carti. This is the album of the month probably. I mean, it's the biggest album of the month. This is the one that dropped. It's Playboi Carti coming back after 5 years, right? What do I think about it though? Me personally, I don't think he's committed to the bit enough. Like there are songs that to me feel like Carti's winking at the camera, like he knows what he's doing is absurd and surreal and almost satirical on his own sound, like OPM Baby, which is a wild ride of just like, it feels like Carti's just saying like, yeah, I know what I'm making is bullshit, but here's the most bullshit I can get. But other songs are just like typical Playboi Carti stuff. It's like just the typical thing you'd hear. And there's 30 songs of that. It's just like kind of mid because there's no real cohesive vision. It's just Playboi Carti making music, getting some cool features on here for a couple songs, but the beats are dry, the mixes are weird at some points. It sounds like a combination of Die Lit and Whole Lotta Red, but with also just like demos, like the one song with Uzi, where it's just like 40 seconds of instrumental on this 1 minute 15-second song, and then Uzi comes in and starts talking about his nuts. Playboi Carti's not even on the song, you know what I mean? He just threw that in there as like a demo, and there's also another song on here with Uzi which really sucked too. It was Twin Trim featuring, this is where actual Playboi Carti and Lil Uzi are on the same song together, but it sucks because it sounds like it's from 2 years ago. Lil Uzi's talking about the Pink Tape and like Narcissist, which is like 2022 era Playboi Carti album coming out. I don't know. Like it feels like the song was recorded 2 years ago and then thrown onto this album as like a last resort effort to get to 30 songs or something. I'd rather take like a 2024 or a Backrooms or something. I mean, I'd rather take a lot better songs than what we got here. I will say though, the songs with structure actually work pretty well. Rather Die with The Weeknd is pretty nice. Probably one of my favorites. Just a really cool melody. People have been talking shit about that. People say it's AI. I don't think so. If it is, that sucks. But it's a cool melody. It's one that sticks with me more, even though it sounds like it's like from Die Lit era or something. I'll take what I can get with this album, man. It's 30 tracks of just like kind of smudgy, weird ideas. Fine Shite is also pretty cool too. I love the line, "Don't say you'll die for me, just die." Like that's just like wild. It's hilarious. I wish Carti leaned into that persona more of just like not being too serious, being like he's a funny guy. You know what I mean? I feel like he can really do something interesting and charismatic on a record, but he didn't lean into it fully on every song. He's sort of just staying in his like comfortable bag. Also, a lot of just like serious Looperman beat filler. Like there's a lot of songs where it's just like, yeah, he pulled a piano loop off Looperman, got a producer to put some 808s on it, and then he said, yeah, and he called it a day. Swamp Izzo does some ad libs over top of it, you know, sell 100,000, make it gold in a week or some shit like that. I don't like, it's not really inspiring. Also, there's the same exact snare roll on multiple songs. If you listen to this album front to back and you really analyze, there's a snare roll. It's like a couple over here and then 3 on this ear, and he copy and paste it on multiple songs over this thing. And I was asking myself, is that cohesion or is that just laziness? And after thinking about it, I think it's cohesion. I think it's a cool idea. Just add the same snare roll on a bunch of different songs just for fun. I don't know. I think it adds to the absurdity of how like phoned in this album is too. It's like him winking at the camera once again, which is weird that I'm getting enjoyment out of the fact that he's winking at the camera from how like weird and bad and kind of mid this album is. But that's where I have to get my enjoyment from if he's giving me 30 tracks of borderline just like mid slop. I don't know. It simply should not be 30 songs. It just ruined the album experience, man. I'd take 18. Take 18, throw the rest out. That's cool. That's fine with me. But 30 is wild. I'm not into this trend of like 30 song shit. I think Kanye started with Donda and it's sort of catching on. I'm not really liking that. Donda was a cool album, but man, other artists are now thinking they can sort of just follow the same vein, and they're getting good numbers on streaming, so there's no incentive for them to stop. It's like, I think this is where the album goes in the future, is just 30 song mid-fests, which kind of is disappointing to me. Actually really disappointing to me. I could get into that like a whole other 10-minute video or some shit, but I don't know. Let's just keep going, okay? That's my thoughts on music. Next album, The Bends by Radiohead. It's a crazy step up from Pablo Honey, their first album. Everybody knows that. I think this album is sort of looked at as their quote-unquote like first like big album, or like first album, I guess. What is that? I didn't press any buttons. I didn't press anything. I thought Planet Telex was pretty cool. I thought it could be on OK Computer. Like, just listen to that again. I'm like, this is a very OK Computer sounding piano part melody, Karma Police sort of vibes. If it got weirder with like feedback loops and weird samples and shit, it could be on, OK Computer, I think. But it's a simple rock album. I like how it flows. It comes and goes. It makes an impression purely off just like the baseline music. There's no extra glitz and glam. It's just like some rock music, hard rock, soft rock, alt rock type stuff. Fake Plastic Trees, High and Dry. I mean, those are really speaking to me. They speak to my soul. They touch me. They make me feel very nice, very warm and fuzzy in the chest region. Black Star is my favorite song from this project. Bulletproof, I Wish I Was, is something that was a sleeper hit for me. I didn't really pay attention to it until this listen, but that song's beautiful too. It's just a lot of good ideas, a lot of beautiful ideas. Just cut and dry album. It starts, it finishes. It's no extra bells and whistles, glitz and glam, like I said, and I can appreciate that. It's just a cool, like, here's a rock album. Here's something cool. Here's what we made. Jonny Greenwood's doing some cool shit with feedback. It's dope. Everybody knows the Bend. We love the Bend. But yeah, let's move on. A Light for Attracting Attention by The Smile. Listen to some Radiohead. I wanted Radiohead Light. That's what I was thinking in my head, pretty much. And I wasn't into the first half of A Light for Attracting Attention. I'm not gonna lie. I thought it was kind of dry. Like the mixes weren't hitting from, like, it kind of sounded like Radiohead Light, but in more ways than one. Not just that we have two members, but like the production itself wasn't as grand or as maximalist as I would have wanted from some of these songs, right? I think Wall of Eyes and Cutouts does it a lot better. The first half of this album wasn't really hitting till I got to Open the Floodgates. Open the Floodgates literally opens the floodgates and makes the last half of the album just like shoot up exponentially in quality. Like it's a beautiful song. First of all, pianos and weird synths. It sounds like a beautiful ethereal ascension into like a digital heaven. Even if the lyrics are like, don't bore us, get to the chorus, like it's very like, oh, come on, we could have made something really intrinsic and mystical here, and we had to be talking about like, the songwriter struggle or something. I don't like, but you can tell that they're having fun making these songs. I really appreciate that. It's them having fun. It's not them trying to make anything as groundbreaking or monumentous as like a Kid A. It's them having fun. Like the opposite, that song, that really sort of proves it to me. That riff wouldn't really be present if they weren't sort of just not taking themselves too seriously. You know what I mean? The jazzier drumming makes a really nice pocket. It's Jonny Greenwood, Tom York, and the third guy, I forget his name, bro. I'm sorry, but he's a drummer that comes from a jazz background, and his jazzy drumming really comes into play here. You have a really cool Latin sort of flavor going on with these songs. It's very chill, very zenned out. I think it works really well. But sometimes the drums are just they're mixed a bit off for me. It takes me out of the experience. I was listening in the car a little bit, and I got to one of the songs, and the snare was just like way too like not in the pocket that the rest of the song was. If I wanted to get really geeky about it, I could say that the 200 hertz was turned up a little bit too much when it should have been like a flat like 6K with reverb sort of sound. I don't know. It would have worked better for one of these songs. I'm geeking. That's me being a nerd, though. That's me being a stupid little snot-nosed nerd, so don't even listen to what I have to say at all. But I listened to A Light for Attracting Attention this month, and that's my thoughts on that one. So let's keep going. Yasuke by Flying Lotus. This is a Japanese-inspired electronic album. I believe this was like a soundtrack for a Netflix show or some sort of Netflix thing. I don't know. But it's mostly instrumental. It's only 47 minutes. Flying Lotus really commits to like this Japanese-centered sounding album. There's a lot of like Japanese-sounding instruments, fluttering Kyotos, and is a Kyoto an instrument? That's a city, right? That's a city. Fuck. Okay. But using weird like scales and like stuff that sounds very Eastern and shit like that. And I can really appreciate he committed to the bit for this thing. There's a lot of cool percussion moments too, like handbells and hand toms and stuff, really taking you into like a bamboo jungle and placing you there next to a campfire and giving you a 47-minute experience, kind of a psychedelic wonder trip of Japanese flavor. Very samurai coded. The album cover is him as a samurai, and that's kind of what we get here. Denzel Curry also has a verse on this thing on one of the songs where he's talking about being a samurai, which is pretty cool, but I'm here for the instrumentals more. It's a 47-minute instrumental project I listened to doing cardio, and it made me feel nice and fuzzy in my brain top. All right, next album. The Private Press by DJ Shadow. DJ Shadow is dope, and this is a full-on producer album from the man himself. Most people might know him for Introducing, which is, valid, but this album blew me away with how good it is. I think I might like it more than Introducing in some aspects, because it's a full-blown producer album where he's not like going into the ambient bag so much with Introducing. It's like he's making beats on this thing and he's cooking. There's a song on here that's actually so conceptual. It's actually, I didn't even know he went down this bag, but he made this song called Mashin' on the Motorway, which is like a weird niche world where our protagonist, who's played by a different MC or a different rapper, is like working his way through like a traffic jam, and like cars are stopping and honking at him like, hey, get out of the way here, and he's like, sorry. And it's produced in such a way where you can visually like picture him jumping over cars and stuff, and like headlights are like blaring, and like you got weird sound effects coming through, and there's like buses and stuff trying to stop this guy, and he's like maneuvering through a traffic jam, like running through a highway where all the cars are still going like 80 miles an hour. I don't even know how you produce a song like that. I could break it down a billion times over. I don't know how to. It's just you need people who have creative brains to make shit like that. This album is very industrial too. I think DJ Shadow is really good at making like industrial, grimy, like stuff that sounds like a city, right? And there's a lot of really cool sample elements in play on this album. Like I really recommend this. I really do. Like if you like production, if you like MF Doom, if you like very interesting sort of like 90s era sort of sample based rap, this is like a crowning achievement. I feel like I've never heard an album so intrinsically completely produced in this style the way I have with DJ Shadow's The Private Press. To real, You Can't Go Home Again is a beautiful beat. It sounds like one of the demos I would have made for like Double Rainbow Land, like my sample bass shit. Like it's like this album really scratches an itch. Like I understand what DJ Shadow is trying to do at like his Maximus level. Like people might not get this album. I get it 100%. I know exactly where he's coming from. I am in tune with his creative energy. He's creating this thing. I think this album is like 8 or a 9 to me. If we're gonna rate it or whatever, that's probably where I'd place it. But man, beautiful. I really think people should check this out. It's so underrated. It's better than Introducing in a lot of aspects for me. Like I said, I think it's just a cool, awesome beat tape that like doesn't get love. I never hear it talked about, and I listen to it because I wanted to hear what else DJ Shadow had to offer, and man, he has a lot to offer. Please tap in. And our next album is also Introducing by DJ Shadow. This is the one that people know. This is like more of an ambient album than anything. He's using samples and building beats in a way that's very hypnotic. Changeling is a beautiful example of this. The drums are loud and dusty and lo-fi, but they don't feel overpowering. They feel like they're very cozy to listen to, which is a weird descriptor to use for like a hip-hop drum-based like kind of album, right? But it's a very cozy listen. It's very ambient. Like the drums don't feel heavy and in your face as much as they feel like guides, sort of guiding you through like a rhythmic sort of like texture, allowing you to float through the world that DJ Shadow builds with all these samples, right? Like they're just guiding you through it with rhythm. It's a dense, stark album. I believe every single sample here is from vinyl rips. Like that's the concept of the album, is like every single sample was pulled from a vinyl he bought at a vinyl store, and he made some cool shit. And it's a really good nap listen as well if you want to take a nap and listen to some cool, lo-fi beats to study to type shite, but from 1996. Then yeah, this is the one. Also, this album really inspired a lot of OK Computer. Airbag. I mean, if you listen to the bass line and the drums on Airbag of OK Computer, that's straight DJ Shadow, man. That's like pretty much inspired one of one from him. You can hear it, the DNA in that song, which I think is really neat. And yeah, pretty cool album. So next one, Phantom Rhythm Remixes by Gong Gong Gong. This is a Japanese electronic album, dance beats, 4 on the floor type of stuff. Playing it safe, low key. It's not too insane. It's a remix album. It's not the real album. I haven't listened to the real album. I just listened to the remix album because I thought the album cover looked cool and I wanted something for my, gym day or whatever. Like there's some cool textures, but there's nothing I didn't expect song to song. Like I could pretty much tell from the start of the album to the end of the album, like what ideas were gonna be present coming up. Like it kind of follows all the cliches of like what a techno album is supposed to do, but it's mixed in a way where it's Japanese. It's a different mix than American mix. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it is different. I don't know, not blow me away, but it's always good to like randomly commit to listening to a weird random album, right? That's how I look at it. So next album, Amnesiac by Radiohead. This is a good album. I think it's pretty cool. It's not my favorite style of Radiohead. Granted, I do think this is still like Kid B. Like this is Kid B sides. People can tell me all they want. Like, oh, it's its own thing. It has more jazzier influence in production. And I'm listening to it. I'm like, man, Pyramid Song could be on Kid A. You know what I mean? Like a lot of this stuff sounds like B-side. This is gonna be weird too, but Push Pull, Revolving Doors, Polk Pull, whatever they call that one. I thought that was actually pretty interesting this time around. The way it transitions from Pyramid Song, like it's the third song, it just blasts you into this weird bass heavy, like sort of weird thing. It's like you're inside a revolving door. So that idea is pretty interesting to me now, even if it is like a bit long. It is pretty long. It should be like a minute 20 probably as a little interlude. That's how I would have done done it if I was the creative director of Amnesiac by Radiohead. I would have said 1 minute 20 song on that one right there. Cool little moment interlude, but let's stop with the whole stretching out to 4 minutes for no reason. But yeah, this is not an album I return to. This is sort of just a homework listen, low key, being real, you know what I mean? But I pulled some cool ideas out of it. Spinning Plates is still a super dope idea. I think that could have landed on Kid A pretty easily. I listen to this album and I just think it's Kid B. That's it. That's all I can really. It's not giving me the intrinsic energy or flow that like a Kid A or OK Computer does, or Hail to the Thief, or anything. Like, this is just kind of like bottom of the barrel in terms of Radiohead album experiences for me personally. But here I am still listening to it and talking about it, so what does that mean? I don't know. Let's keep going. Grace by Jeff Buckley. Never heard this album. Brad Taste of Music reacted to it, and I tuned in for that video, and I was like, oh shit, I gotta like actually listen to this thing in full now, because I didn't know it took as many turns as it did when I was watching that video. It's beautifully produced. It goes from like soft spoken like intimate rock to just like hard, grungy, insane stuff like what's it called? Eternal Life is almost a metal song out of just nowhere. And the elephant in the room is that Jeff Buckley only released this album and then he passed away. He actually drowned, which is very unfortunate and very tough. It makes me think about like the butterfly effect. Like, what would happen if Jeff Buckley didn't leave us too early? What would his next 5 albums look like? How would they influence culture? How would they influence music? How would they influence how musicians use their voice? Because I know Tom York was hella inspired by this album. And it's the reason he sort of amped up his voice and became more intimate and more feminine with his vocals on things like the bends, when you have like fake plastic trees and stuff like that, where he's really using his voice in a more like sing-songy way, almost like a bird. I don't know, maybe that was a whole lot of yap that people don't understand, but that's how I picture it in my head when I hear that. The title song, Grace, goes through so many ebbs and flows of different like volumes and different energies, and different chord changes and stuff, but it all loops back around to be a cohesive experience, and that's really interesting to me. Also, Lover You Should Come Over and So Real. Those 2 songs, they really get me going, man. They really get me going. The Lover You Should Come Over is wild because it is literally pretty much like walking through the rain with your head down, and you got everybody else has umbrellas, and you're walking the opposite direction as all the people with umbrellas are, and then you're looking down and you're romanticizing about like your place in the world and how you're gonna be somebody probably, or how maybe you're not. I don't know. It's a weird romanticization type of song. And yeah, that's how I feel about that album. Grace by Jeff Buckley. So real. Rest in peace. Emperor Tomato Ketchup by Stereolab. I've gotten DMs on Instagram comparing my album Mecha Robo to Stereolab, so I finally decided to tune in and see what's up with it, and it's pretty cool. I picked this album out of all Stereolab's discography because of the name. Emperor Tomato Ketchup is a wild name. I mean, I like albums that just like say why the fuck not. This album's like simple alt rock infused with like electronic sounds similar to like Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots or Sweet Trip. I actually think this album is like kind of a combination of those 2 sounds. Pretty DIY, so it kind of makes sense. I mean, that's kind of what those 2 albums are. I mean, it's just Sweet Trip DIYing their own sound, and Dave Friedman is sort of the mix and mastermind of Yoshimi, and he's sort of doing his own thing there with the Flaming Lips. So I mean, it kind of gives me the same vibe. There's a lot of experimental mixing. Some songs are pretty janky, but that's pretty awesome. You know, I can appreciate some janky, off, weird sounds. You know what I mean? Like, that's cool. I like albums that are a bit off. I've heard enough normal albums. You know what I mean? I'm not looking for Maroon 5 2, or I'm not looking for like Sabrina Carpenter 2. I want some like actual weird stuff that makes me go, huh. Also, the lyrics are pretty interesting if you tune into what's being said. I don't know. I thought it was Japanese at first. Then I realized, no, they are Japanese, but they're speaking in English. I just wasn't really understanding. Like, it sounds like they're spacing apart words just to make them match the melodies and stuff, and you can't really pick up what they're saying the first time around. But if you really dig in, there's some interesting concepts floating around there. Stuff about like sociology and war and like what it means to be a fighter on one of the songs. That was kind of interesting. So just stuff I'm picking up on, and pretty cool album. Check it out if you haven't. Next one, In Rainbows by Radiohead. Big Radiohead month. What does that say? I am miserable, I think. There's a reason this is a favorite album, though, by so many. In Rainbows is a classic for a reason. Jigsaw, Body Snatchers, love those energies. But even stuff like 15 Step, that is experimental, that's weird. Songs like Videotape, I mean, it's just a piano ballad with weird percussive stuff. It sounds like a precursor to what they're doing on King of Limbs a little bit, too. This is like King of Limbs if it was more rock-oriented, rock-centered, I think. I mean, this is pretty general progression. I feel like it's inspiring to listen to from a producer standpoint as well, because I'm getting really into recording like guitars and bass, and it's kind of a training arc. You know, I've been producing with samples and like hip hop stuff for a long time, so trying to produce stuff more intentionally with like drums and bass and guitar, it's pretty intimidating. But this album really kind of bakes it down and makes it kind of simple for me to hear for myself and be like, okay, this is pretty nice. I know how to do this. I know how to tackle this. I know how they tackled this and this and this, and maybe I can emulate it for myself, like that kind of energy. You know what I mean? Nude is a really beautiful song, but I can't get out of my head now there's like a meme on TikTok where it's like, yeah, I wonder what you look like when you're nude, and it's Tom York, and he sounds all weird and dumb, and I don't know. I think it might have been the original demo for the song, but it cracks me up, and I can't stop thinking about it now, because this song is beautiful and fully realized, but that demo get me giggling. Also, before I leave, I want to piss people off real quick. Even though I talked about Videotape, I do think it's a little bit of an overrated song, in my opinion. I mean, it's cool ideas, cool percussions and stuff, but people are saying like the lyrics are really, oh, they're so blissful to read into, and like this is such a dark song. I don't know what the meaning is. Is he talking about like when he's in heaven, he's gonna see his life flash before him and like all the decisions he's made? Because that's not really dark. It's kind of cool. I don't know. Opinion time. Sorry about that if you don't like that, but it's okay. We're gonna move on here. Godstained by Quedeca. This is a single. This is not an album, but everybody's been talking about it. It's pretty much like the highlight of a lot of people's month, because Quedeca is a really interesting artist, and he dropped something that's so completely left field from anything people thought he would drop. I think with like the strings and the acoustic guitars, it sounds very like he's getting into his beautiful bag a lot more. He's maxing out his beautiful points on his skill tree, is kind of what I would describe it as. And you got waves in the background, some seagulls and stuff like that. Like this dude's really world building us into like a weird ocean vibe, which I'm very excited for, because I know Quad, it really gets heavy into his concepts, and it's pretty inspiring when you have somebody who just goes all out, tunnel visions on like weird niche shit. I'm very interested in what the sound of this next album is going to be. I got open ears for it. I think if I had to make a prediction, the compositions, the musical melodies are going to be at the forefront. I think like the stuff we heard in the beginning of this song is probably what we're going to hear more of on the rest of the album, sort of intertwining the songs together. I think that might be the direction he's going in, and I'm very excited for that. But I also have a prediction. I have a prediction for all y'all out there. I believe the ending of this song is going to be different on the album version. I think this is just the single version. I think we're going to get a different ending for the album one. It's going to transition into something different. That's how I feel. We'll see if that comes to fruition. But yeah, cool single. Not an album, but probably need to be talked about. It's in the zeitgeist, right? So next album. Mechorobo Timeline by Scuba Diver. Shit's wild. That's all I can say, bro. Shit's wild. I like it. Next album, How Do You Feel Now by Joywave. This is a dope album from my middle school years I listened to, playing Halo on Xbox while this album was just full blast in my headphones in like 2017, 2018. Oh my god, good times, bro. If you guys haven't heard of Joywave, they're a band that I think this is their best album. They've sort of progressed into more of like commercial territory, or trying to get like placements on like sync licensing or placements on advertisements. That's what their music sounds like now, which really sucks, because they hit like a weird stride here, mixing hard rock and like 2013 sort of EDM sounds combined with like really interesting sound design. Like this is a weird album. It combines hard rock with house music, and it combines them in a weird cohesive way. Lots of weird elements getting thrown in here. Like I can't really explain this album without you listening to it. It's fully realized. It's their best album. If I was gonna recommend an album by Joywave, it would be this one. There's a song on this album called Traveling at the Speed of Light, which is like their Odyssey song. Like the video right there. Shit, I didn't even press anything. It's a 6-minute song about traveling at the speed of light. The lyrics are really interesting. I think it's my favorite song from this album. It's a beautiful moment. It's like the big climax of the record before it closes. And yeah, it's beautiful. I wish the album didn't end with the song Bad Dreams, though. That song's just not good. Every other song is good, but the ending song just isn't great to me. It sounds like a Billie Eilish song, but made by hard rock musicians in 2014, so you can imagine. There's also a song called Nice House, which is really, really interesting to me. And our main vocalist, Daniel Armbruster, is talking about how he wants to have a nice house. He thought he'd have a nice house. He thought he'd be at like the peak life right now, and he's not. He's not. And it was all a dream that was led on to him. And the song closes with a 2-minute harp solo. That's correct. 2 minutes of just harp. It's a beautiful moment. It's really artistic. It's so beautiful. And I wish we got more of this Joywave, because now they're leaning into, like I said, like making music for commercials and like stuff that would sound good in like a Target back to school ad. I mean, hopefully they're getting a bag, but like songs like this just remind me of like, man, like music is beautiful. Like art is beautiful. Anybody could have the potential to make something that's just a story. Like this is a beautiful, monumentous story about like your expectations not being reality. And maybe it was all a dream. That's what that harp solo gives me. It's like maybe it was all a dream to begin with. And it's sad and it's crushing, but it's beautiful. And I take it as the real closer for the record, because it is the second to last song. And yeah, I'd really check out this album if you haven't. It was formative for me in my middle school years, and I think it subconsciously has something to do with how I make music myself. I mean, it has to. I listen to it so much in my formative years, it has to subconsciously impact me in some way. So I just recommend it to people. It's really dope. It's really good. I don't hear anybody talking about it, and I want to talk about it with people more. So yeah. Next album, In Rainbows, Disc 2. Listen to this one as well. Just I want some extra In Rainbows. It's just some extra demos from the In Rainbows sessions. It's nothing too crazy, but I appreciate Bangers plus Mash and Down is the New Up. Those are actually pretty cool. I like listening to these demo albums because they make me picture like what a expanded version of In Rainbows could sound like if they decided to add these songs on. Like, where would I track list them? Where would I place them, right? 4-Minute Warning is also pretty beautiful. If I had a track list 4-Minute Warning, I'd actually place it as the first song on In Rainbows. I know it's kind of weird, but I think it'd be cool to have 4-Minute Warning right in the 15 step. Like, that's a really cool, interesting idea to me. So I listened to that one as well. It's 27 minutes of In Rainbow's B-side, so there's quite a bit of material on here, but you know, just cool to listen to. Next album, Sunburn EP by Muse. This is an EP by Muse. Listen to this during a cool little chest fly set, because I needed something to hold me for 18 minutes as I was doing some chest flies and shit, and this was a cool album. Sunburn. I don't know, I mean, I'd never heard Muse before. I didn't know exactly what they were about, and now I kind of understand. They're people always compare them to Radiohead and stuff like that. I feel like they feel more like Limp Bizkit to me. Wild, but the way the vocals go and stuff, it's a little bit more of a corny take on hard rock, at least in my opinion. I don't know, but I'm here for it. Sunburn's a really cool song. Sunburn's a really cool song. Ashamed is a really dope song. They're using feedback a lot. They're very hard rock. I thought the vocalist was doing a little bit too much at some points, but that's okay. You know, if you're not doing too much, you're doing too little, and nobody wants to listen to too little, right? So that was pretty wise, actually. I just came up with that's wild. Okay, next thing, the Valoria EP by the Pixies. Just 10 minutes, 4 songs. Valoria, Make Believe, I've Been Waiting for You, and The Thing. It's from 1990. It's an EP by the Pixies. It's pretty cool. It's I like the opening song Valoria a lot. The mix sounds like, you know, 90s like unmixed grunge demos type shit, but I'm okay with that because that's a cool vibe. It's a cool little pocket to put me in. I'm fine with that. It seems to be a common theme where I talk about the mix being off and then I'm like, what? But I'm fine with it. Maybe that's like something I gotta deal with on my own. Maybe that's a peek into my soul. Maybe someone can psychoanalyze me and tell me exactly what's wrong with me and what I need to fix based on what I say in these videos or something. That'd be great. But this is a cool EP. Been getting into like listening to EPs a little bit more just because they're like pocket-sized chunks of vibe. You know what I mean? Like a single is alright, but if I'm not gonna listen to an album, I might listen to an EP rather than a single. You know what I mean? Because EPs are just like mini albums, like a third of an album condensed, and you get a nice little pocket vibe, and there's not too much structure going on. And honestly, I should make more EPs. It's probably better for me and my output, low-key. Maybe that's something I should study. Maybe that's something I should just act on, low-key. I don't know. But yeah, let me know. But cool little listen. Next album, Sinister Grift by Panda Bear. I wasn't sure what this album was gonna be. I listened to a lot of Animal Collective in like December, November, which Panda Bear is like a main part of that crew. And apparently all of Animal Collective is present on this album. They're like playing guitar, they're playing bass, they're helping with mixes and stuff. So this is technically an Animal Collective record, but just under the Panda Bear name. And I was really kind of blown away by it, low-key. I didn't know it was gonna be this style. It's so different from anything I've heard from these guys. You got avant-garde, like Beach Boys melodies over top, like hazy, psychedelic, pseudo 60s surf rock. Is that enough buzzwords? Oh my god, I sound like a Rate Your Music sort of algorithm or some shit. Fuck. But this whole album's on shrooms as well. I should probably mention that. This album is wild. It's very hazy, hypnotic. It's something to listen to when you pop a thing of acid and you're on the beach and you're eating rainbow ice cream and you have something on your headphones. And the last two songs remind me a lot of In Rainbows, actually, because the ambience and the atmosphere takes the forefront and everything is sort of just wallowing in this weird sound effect bed of hazy psychedelic wonderlandness. It's like very ambient, very smudged, perfect for some substances. And that's how I feel about this album. Pretty cool, pretty nice surprise. Don't really like the album cover that much, but it's alright. But that's March. That is March, everybody. That's every single album we listen to. Recommend me more stuff. You guys recommended me some actual stuff. Portraits of Tracy. Send me some more stuff in the comments below. Share this with your friends. Share it with your family members. Share it with your dad. Reach out to him. He's probably lonely, man. He wants connection. As for me, I'm gonna keep listening to music. I'm gonna keep creating music, and I'm very excited to do that because I'm in the moment right now where I get to be creative and make new ideas after being in a funk for so long. I appreciate everybody who's been down with me. People have been posting edits to Mekarobo Timeline. People have been posting like stuff on Rate Your Music saying it's like 100 out of 100. That's like really cool. It's inspiring to me that like my weird ideas can really reach out to people. And as a wise man once said, I guess I'm really 19, guess I'm really trying hard. I've been trying to stay in the green. It's been pulling me apart. Appreciate y'all for watching. I will see y'all. Thank you. Have a good one.